Hello everybody, welcome back. Guys, I've got something really excited planned for this video and I cannot wait to tell you all about it. So come on in and let's get started. So I know a lot of you guys are probably wondering, Aiden, where the hell have you been? Guys, I know I kind of disappeared for a little while. I've been gone for the last couple of months and I haven't really informed any of y'all as to where I've been or what I've been doing. I would like to start off by saying I am so sorry for not updating y'all on my status or where I'm at or what I'm doing. I know a lot of you guys were worried that I fell off the face of the earth, that I just disappeared. I've gotten so many messages and so many comments. I know a lot of you guys have been worried about me, but I just want you to know that you do not have to worry about me. I am doing perfectly fine. To be quite honest with you, earlier this year, I just kind of hit a wall and I was experiencing some really bad creative burnout, and I kind of just had to take a break for a little bit and, take a breather from everything, especially YouTube, and clear my head and sort of figure out my mental health, because at the same time that I was dealing with a lot of the burnout, I was also grieving the loss of 2 of our family dogs, as well as the loss of my grandmother. So it was just kind of a difficult time altogether. And I really just had to step back from everything. And I did, and I'm very glad that I did. I've had some time to really sort out my mental health. I've started going to therapy and things are really going a lot better now. And I feel a lot better, and I am just so excited to finally be back, and I'm so glad that I am back in time for Halloween, because as a lot of y'all know, Halloween is my most favorite time of the year. It's kind of my whole thing, so I'm glad that I get to be here to do what we're doing today, which I cannot wait to tell you about, because I think you guys are gonna love it. I should probably go ahead and acknowledge the space that I'm filming in currently, because you guys have never seen this space on the channel before. This is actually our new workshop that my dad has been building for about the last year. He's been working on getting all of this put together. It just so happens to be that the building is done and usable in time for Halloween. And now I have been planning all year to kind of just keep Halloween real low-key this year, because y'all know me, I usually go all out. And it's the most elaborate festivities ever. But I don't really want to do that this year. Well, I didn't really want to do that this year. And then we crept closer and closer and closer to October, and then I kind of just, I started getting FOMO. I was like, ooh, I should throw a party. I should throw a party. And when I started toying with the idea to throw a party, I sort of started realizing that I could use this new workshop as my event space. And it was kind of opens up a lot of opportunities to make some really cool decorations. Everything kind of just fell in place for all of this to happen. So it's very last minute. I've been planning like crazy for the last week. All of this is happening as these videos are coming out. This is going to be a series. Y'all, I am throwing the biggest Halloween party I have ever thrown. I am going all out for this party. I want it to be full Martha Stewart level. We're going Halloween to the max. I would love to introduce, where'd they go? I would like to formally introduce AIDEN'S Halloween costume ball. This is the invitation that I went ahead and made, and I've got a few of them printed out to hand out to all of our guests. I really love how these turned out. I just used a bunch of old illustrations from vintage greeting cards and stuff like that and sort of mashed them together on this little card, and I think they're super cute. I am just so excited to be able to throw this elaborate of a party, because I have always dreamed of having a space to do something like this, and not to mention having all of you guys out there to bring with me on this entire project. I think it's going to be the most fun I've ever had. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and start working on our first project for this party, which is going to be setting up the Halloween village in the house. Now, my mom's already done the whole house up. It looks great, but she hasn't done the village. So we're going to go ahead and start working on setting that up. Okay, let's talk village. I kind of do a different display every year. We always pick and choose from our collection because we don't really have enough space to display the entire collection, because we do have some duplicates. I have some pieces, my mom has some pieces, so we kind of pick and choose from both of our collections as to what pieces we want to display each year. I'm thinking this year we're going to do our trick or treat street, and then we're also going to have a separate display over on the hutch that we normally kind of do the same every year. For the trick or treat street, we're going to be displaying Mummy House, Bat House, Kraken House, Halloween Party House, the Limax Halloween Party House, Limax Spooky Winter, and maybe some others if we can fit them in there, but I think those are the ones that we're trying to target this year. So first things first, when we're setting up the village, I have to start with platforms. Now, I'm gonna be using platforms that I made a few years ago. These are just carved out of pink insulation foam. For those of you who have been around for a while, I'm sure a lot of you know, I used to be a lot more into the Halloween Village stuff, especially here on the channel. And I used to make all kinds of platforms. I've pretty much done all of the platforms that we're using in these displays today. If you want to learn how to make your own Halloween Village platforms, there's a ton of really great tutorials on YouTube, and it's fairly inexpensive to make. You just have to make sure that you have the right tools and the space to do it. Starting with the trick or treat street, I'm going to go ahead and lay down all of the platforms, making sure that I have them put in the right spots. I kind of have to figure it out every year because it's kind of hard to remember where each piece goes. I'm then gonna do the same thing over on the hutch, and I'm gonna set up all of the platforms. Now, these platforms are a little bit more puzzle piecey, like they have to go together a very specific way, and they are sort of contoured to fit these specific pieces that we place here every year. It's like one of our favorite displays. It looks beautiful on our hutch. So once I've got my platforms all laid out, I'm gonna start unboxing my buildings. For our buildings, we like to store them in their original boxes because these things do get quite expensive, and we, want to protect them and preserve them for as long as possible. And they will last for a very long time if you take care of them. So we always pack them up in their original boxes, and we put all of their adapters with them so that they have their original cords and everything. And we usually just store them in IKEA bags, funny enough. We find that's very convenient. So once I've got all of my pieces unboxed, I'm gonna go ahead and start setting them out where they're gonna go. And as I place them down, I'm kind of going ahead and hooking up their cords and getting all of those run down behind our couch. And I kind of have to move pieces around every year to figure out exactly like how we want them to go. Especially on this trick or treat lane display, because it's got all of these steps and pathways and stuff that are carved into it for a specific layout. So we kind of have to use those to figure out other layouts of buildings that line up nicely together, but it's not too bad. They're spaced out just enough that like we can exchange pretty much any house wherever we want. So once everything is set up, I went ahead and plugged all of the pieces in, made sure that everything worked. A few of them needed some new light bulbs and stuff like that, so I went ahead and got all of that stuff hooked up. So now we can start setting in our figurines and accessories. It's a lot of figurines, trust me. It would take forever to thoroughly pack all of these up in like bubble wrap. So we usually just start rolling them up together in toilet paper and just store them that way. We've been collecting figurines for several years now, and like every year we add a few more to our collection. So they are my favorite part of the village. I think that they really bring it to life. I love the buildings, they're so beautiful, but the people and the accessories are like what makes it feel like a real town. And I love the trick-or-treaters and all the different costumes. Like it does something for me, and I love it. I really have no rhyme or reason to how I put the figurines in there. I kind of just put them spaced out and try and think about like what kind of little stories and vignettes I want to tell. Especially in the graveyard, it's fun playing with all of the zombies, and one of my favorites is the guy being chased by a ghost. I think he's really cute. But once I've got all of my figurines set up, I'm gonna go ahead and start putting in the trees and the fencing and any other little knickknacks and trinkets that go in the village. I'm also gonna set up a couple of Department 56 Twinkle Bright trees to kind of add a little bit of motion behind the Trick or Treat street. They are like one of my most favorite things that Department 56 has made. I just love the Twinkle Bright trees. They just give the village so much more life, seeing the way the light reflects on the pieces and everything. I just love it so much. And with that, the village is finished, and I think it looks really cute this year. I'm super happy with how it turned out. It's like one of our favorite decorations. It looks so cute every year on the back of the couch. It's like a staple. It doesn't feel like Halloween unless the village is set up, and I love it. It's one of my most favorite traditions. So it's time to start talking about how we want to make our next project, which is going to be a piñata. Now, I've never made a piñata before, and I had to do a little bit of research about piñatas because I honestly had no idea how to even build one or really what they're even made out of. But I don't think building a piñata is going to be that difficult. I mean, I'm mostly just worried about the sort of like structure of it, because I know a lot of people say their kind of issue with piñatas is that they're too durable and that they don't bust open easy enough, and that's kind of something you have to look out for. So I'm hoping that this one will bust open and everything will be fine. And yeah, I also don't want to put too much time into decorating it. I'm gonna make it look cute, but I don't want to like go crazy with it because again, it's gonna get smashed. So for our piñata, I'm gonna be building the base out of cardboard. So to actually start building our piñata, I'm gonna start by cutting out all of our pieces. I was able to get the help of my friend Daisy, and we were able to go ahead and start tracing out our circles for the piñata, as well as a few strips to go around the outside. From there, we were able to roll our strips into sort of like a little spiral and then unroll it just to crimp it and give us like a nice bowed piece of cardboard that we could tape around the edge. I was making sure to roll it against the grain of the cardboard, just using a little bit of masking tape. I kind of held the edge up and had Daisy tape all the way around. It kind of worked out where I had two longer strips and then one shorter one, so I made sure when it came time to hang it that I positioned that shorter panel on the bottom. So I'm hoping that it'll kind of break loose once all that candy is in there pushing down on it. Hopefully whenever somebody hits it, that bottom panel will just kind of fall off. That's the plan. We'll see. I don't know if it's gonna work that way or not, but we'll find out. And then we went ahead and put the top on, and that left us with a big drum, basically. I also just took a knife and cut a little like flap in the side of it to put the candy in, fill it up and all that. So now we can start looking at decorating our piñata. I'm gonna start by cutting 2 giant circles of this black poster board, and I'm just gonna hot glue this on the front and back of my piñata. So when doing some research about building piñatas, I kind of learned a lot about the sort of structural integrity of piñata making and how to hang them. There's a lot of different ways that you can hang them, but the way I decided to do it was with the wire method and just run a wire all the way around the outside of my piñata that is attached to the ring that you hang it from, so that all of the weight is supported in that ring. I also went over and added some masking tape just to make sure that my ring didn't slide around or anything. It's pretty tight on there, but just to make sure that the drum doesn't like slip and fall out of the metal ring. I just wanted to make sure that it would stay in place. Next, I'm going to start making the sort of confetti strips that go around the outside out of crepe paper streamers. I got some in black and orange, and we're just going to be using these to make our confetti strips. To make the confetti strips, I'm going to be taking a small piece of cardboard that I cut about 6 inches by 3 inches, and then I also cut a little slot in the top of it, just enough for me to slip the edge of my ribbon into it, just to hold it, and then I'm going to start wrapping that ribbon around, leaving about a little less than an inch hanging off the edge of the cardboard. And after you've got it wrapped quite a bit, you're going to take some scissors and you're just going to cut notches all the way down, as well as sort of get your scissors in there and cut each end so that you have even snips all the way around your ribbons. Having the cardboard there kind of helps give you like a guide so that your scissors will only snip so far into the ribbons. I found this was super helpful and kind of, helped to make sure that all my cuts were like super even, and it was very efficient, and I was able to knock out like 3 bolts of this sort of ribbon for the entire piñata in about 15 to 20 minutes. From there, I'm gonna take my strips and just start hot gluing them on. I know some people also like to use tacky glue, Elmer's glue, any type of glue, really. It really doesn't matter. But I happen to have a lot of hot glue, so we're just gonna be using that. And I'm just gonna go one by one and just glue my strips all the way around my piñata. I decided to alternate between black and orange to kind of give me like a stripe look, sort of like the vintage festooning sort of garlands that are made out of this similar type of paper. And I just layered them nicely on top of each other, and I had to make sure that I was gluing onto the cardboard as well as the ribbon below, so that it's like on there extra sturdy, because this paper is really fragile and I didn't want it to like tear or get blown around or whatever. So I just wanted to make sure that it was also stuck onto the box really good. And then for my last strip, I kind of was able to pull this crepe paper ribbon because it's almost stretchy. If you pull on it, it's got a little bit of give to it. So I was able to kind of pull it and stretch it right around the edge to give me like a nice clean corner on the back side. Hello. So we are done with our outside layer on the piñata, and I think it looks really nice. I'm honestly quite impressed. I think that it looks like a piñata, and that's what we're going for. This is actually the back side. So now we're gonna look at painting the front side with sort of a vintage witch moon situation, kind of like one of those old Beastal die cut decorations. So I've gathered some acrylic paints, I've gathered some brushes, water, my trusty dusty little paint palette. Y'all, I have used this same exact paint palette for literally 5 or 6 years, I think. Every folk art collection I've done, every painting I've done in the last 5 years, there's a lot of paint built up on this plate, and I love it so much. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just start painting our moon face. Hopefully it'll be pretty quick and easy. I don't want to put too much effort into it, again, because like I said, I don't want this to look too amazing because it's gonna get smashed in. So we're just gonna do the best that we can to make it look cute, and we'll say it's good enough. To begin our paint job, I'm gonna be using some of this cheap yellow acrylic paint that I bought from the dollar store. And I'm gonna be using this because it's really sheer, it's not the best quality, but it's just enough that I can use to almost sketch out my design and give me like a nice priming layer. So I'm just using this with a small brush, and I'm gonna start sketching out my design. I feel like as long as you get the right colors in the right general areas, it'll have that vintage Halloween feel. So it's really, you can paint it however you want. Once I've got my moon sketched out, I then fill it in and get a good base layer down. Then before that dries, I'm gonna go in with some white acrylic paint. And now this is a little bit nicer brand of paint. It's got a little bit more pigment to it. And I'm gonna be using this to sort of blend into that yellow and prime it to lighten it up since we are painting on a black background. But I'm doing it while it's wet so that there are kind of streaks of that black showing through, because that's gonna help give it some of that like vintage aged texture that we kind of want to replicate. Then from there, I went back over the top of all of that with a little bit of orange that I mixed. I mixed a little bit of red into it just to make it a little bit darker, and then I coated over everything. And I am not worried about the outline or the shape of things. I'm just trying to get some built up color in those general areas. And then I'm gonna go in with some black and I'm gonna start edging everything out, and I'm gonna like edging everything out. Tracing everything out, not edging. Because then I'm gonna go in with some black and just start tracing everything out, outlining it. And then everything outside of that, if I, kind of got some paint outside the lines, I'm just gonna paint it all black and it's gonna dry down matte, and it just blended right into the poster board. I'm also gonna go in with a little bit of white and add in some highlights here and there. And with that, the paint job is essentially done. Okay, so our piñata is pretty much done. The paint job, I think, looks good enough, which is what we're going for. And so now I'm going to make the finishing touch, which is going to be the tassel for the bottom, because I feel like it just needs a little bit something extra just to take it that much further, because it is kind of a simple shape just being a circle. So I kind of want to add a little bit more just to make it a little fancier. Okay, so for our tassel, I'm going to be constructing this out of a few different things. Obviously, some more paper streamers, as well as this decorative black and gold ribbon that we got from the Dollar Tree. And then also some pipe cleaners, which we're only gonna need one, because this is just what we're gonna use to tie our tassel together. So I'm gonna start by determining how long I would like my tassel to be. I think I want it somewhere around there, about 1 foot long. And I'm just gonna go ahead and cut a bunch of pieces this same length. Now, I'm folding it in half so that this is where we're gonna attach it all together. So you technically need it twice as long as you actually want your tassel to be. This little ribbon here is a little bit shorter than the others, but I think it's okay. We're just gonna throw them in there anyway because it doesn't really matter. Next, I'm gonna take some streamers and I'm going to roll off a good length of them. And then I'm going to fold this in half. And then starting on the 2 ends down here, not the folded side, I'm gonna roll this up as best I can. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then now that I am at the top here, you're gonna leave just a little bit on top, that little folded bit. You're not going to cut that. You're only gonna cut your roll, and you're just gonna make a few vertical cuts along your ribbon, and then unroll them. And there you have some paper fringe for your tassel. And I'm gonna open this up. And as you can see, the middle, it's still connected, okay? So that middle part, I'm gonna put in the center of my stack here. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with my black, just like that. So now I'm gonna lay my black one on top, and then I'm going to take my pipe cleaner and we're just gonna wrap all this together and then twist it off, just like that. I'm gonna trim these just a little bit shorter. And there we have our tassel, just like that. So if you want, you can cut this down and make it shorter. You can leave it as long as you want. You can make it as long as you want. I think I'm gonna leave it this long because I like the flowiness of it. But I'm gonna just poke a hole in the bottom of the piñata and we'll just kind of shove it up in there. It doesn't have to be perfect. This whole thing's gonna fall apart when it's done anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah. Our next project is definitely a little bit more to tackle, especially with the amount of time that we have before this party. So I'm going to be enlisting the help of some of my amazing friends to come and work on our next project together. My idea for this project is to create a bunch of vintage inspired paper jack-o'-lanterns to hang all over the ceiling of the dance floor, which is going to be the room behind me. My idea is to essentially create a bunch of paper mache pumpkins out of paper mache and balloons. And then we're gonna cut some faces out and sort of put the paper inserts in them so that they light up, similar to the look of those kind of like vintage German paper lanterns, the little jack-o'-lantern faces. So that's kind of what we're going for, but we're gonna start by making the base for all of our pumpkins. I'm thinking that we're gonna need somewhere around 15 to 20 pumpkins for this entire ballroom. It's gonna be a lot of paper mache. So I called in my friends and we got busy. Luckily, my friend Skylar was able to hook us up with this amazing bag of paper that all happened to be white paper that she was able to find at a local yard sale, and it was like absolutely perfect for this project. We were able to flatten out our sheets of paper and then begin tearing them into strips. When it comes to shredding paper for paper mache, I've learned that most papers like newspaper, packing paper, any sort of sturdy paper that you're gonna be using for paper mache, usually it has a grain to it. So if you try and tear it one way and it sort of wants to tear at an angle or whatever, rotate your paper and then try and tearing it again, because it'll likely tear in a straight line. I tear my paper into about 1 to 2 inch strips. I find it's best to make quite a variety of different sizes because you're gonna need different widths and different thicknesses for different parts of your balloon. Once we have copious amounts of paper shreds and we've had quite a lot of fun playing in them, we're gonna go ahead and start paper macheing our balloons. Now I'm blowing up a variety of 9-inch and 12-inch balloons, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing up my glue mixture. Now I'm gonna be using Elmer's school glue, not Elmer's glue all, simply because I couldn't find glue all in a large jug. From my understanding, Elmer's glue all is a little bit more concentrated than Elmer's school glue. So school glue has a little bit more water in it. It's a little more diluted. So when you're making your glue mixture for paper mache, you'll want to use a little less water than you normally would, usually about 50-50. For this, I'm going to be doing about 70 to 30% glue to water ratio. You want it to be kind of the thickness of like a heavy cream or milk kind of consistency. Once the glue's all mixed up, we're then going to start dipping our strips and applying them to the balloon. This is just, you know, classic paper mache. There's nothing crazy to it. We're just laying our strips on, trying to get it as smooth as possible. The first coat is always going to be super messy, so don't worry about if it's bumpy. We'll smooth it out later. This project is super easy, and I feel like absolutely anybody can do this. In fact, many of the friends that I have helping me with this project have never done it before either, so this is their first time doing paper mache, which just goes to show that absolutely anybody can tackle projects like this at home. So after a couple of hours, we've got all of our balloons completely covered, and we gotta leave them to dry. Now, I have got them all stood on these little rings that I made out of cardboard just to hold them up to let them dry. And I've got them positioned under a little desk with a fan blowing on them just to keep air circulating around them to try and dry them as fast as possible. I'm gonna leave these to dry for about 24 hours and then we'll come back and add our second coat. All right, so now that I've got my balloons covered and they are nice and dry, I'm gonna go ahead and start adding a second coat on all of them. Most of them dried pretty good. They all, you know, they're pretty hard. So I'm pretty happy with it so far, but a few of them, the balloon for some reason did pop. I don't know why. Could be the temperature change. It could be a lot of different things, but I'm basically just gonna have to blow up another balloon inside of this and kind of like refill it so that I can put the second coat on it. But I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing up some glue and start putting on my paper mache. Luckily, I was actually able to have a couple of my friends come over last minute to help me tackle this because, y'all, I am in a time crunch to get these projects done. They have been such a lifesaver at helping with these DIY projects, as well as helping me go through and gather supplies and pull decorations from storage. It's so amazing having my friends around to help with these projects. And now for the second coat, I'm being sure to use much smaller pieces of paper. I'm going through and dipping a longer strip of paper and then I'm tearing it while it's wet into little stickers, basically little squares, and I'm applying those all over the balloon. This is gonna help smooth out any imperfections, and using a bunch of smaller pieces is gonna ultimately make our balloons a little bit stronger and more durable because you've got a lot more overlapping edges. This is also just going to smooth out the overall surface a lot and get rid of a lot of those wrinkles or any like little puckers in the paper. And once we've got all of our balloons completely covered again, we're once again gonna let them dry for about 24 hours or longer, depending on how thick your layers are. So our balloons are completely dry, and we could probably go ahead and put a third layer on them just to make them a little more durable. And if you're doing this at home, I would recommend doing a third layer. But simply because I'm using a pretty thick paper for this, I found that 2 layers is enough to get us by. We need to move on to the next steps of this project because we are running out of time. So we're gonna go ahead and pop the balloons. To pop the balloon, you're just gonna snip a little hole at the very top and just let the air out very slowly so that it has time to pull away from the walls of the paper mache because it's gonna be kind of stuck on there. There was a few that didn't really want to release too well. So if you do run into that, just try and cut a hole in the top and carefully peel the balloon out. Honestly, popping the balloon is like my most favorite part of doing balloon paper mache because it makes the most satisfying noise in the world. So now that we've got all of our balloons completely made, it's time to start cutting out the shapes that they're gonna be, starting with the opening on top. We're first gonna take some rolls of tape or anything that we have that's circular, and we're just gonna trace out some guidelines on the top of all of our pumpkins. Then using some scissors, I'm gonna cut out those openings, and then that will give us a little bit of room to get our hands inside because we're gonna have to cut out the faces now. For the faces, I just drew on some simple shapes, you know, a hot dog mouth and 2 circular eyes and a triangle nose, similar to that of those vintage German ornaments. Then using some box cutters, we're gonna go ahead and cut these out. Be so careful with this because this paper mache is flimsy and before you know it, you can cut your hand. So please, please, please be careful if you are cutting out faces like this. These knives are very sharp. Take your time with it. It doesn't have to be perfect because I kind of find that when making vintage Halloween kind of stuff, the imperfectness is what makes it look that much more realistic and it looks like true vintage because it's aged and distressed and it looks handmade. So the jagged edges and stuff, I'm not really that worried about. I think that they're just gonna add to the overall look of the pumpkins. I'm honestly so happy that I was able to have my friends help me with this because I love the variety of faces that I was able to get. Even though they're all very similar, they all have their own character and we were kind of able to let the wrinkles on these pumpkins, you know, kind of decide where their faces should go. So it's just really fascinating to me to see how all of their different expressions come out. Now that we've got all of our faces cut out, we're ready to start decorating these pumpkins. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by mixing up a base orange color. We're gonna need a lot of this because I've got a lot of pumpkins to cover. In a small jar, I'm gonna start by mixing about an entire bottle of orange paint with a little bit of red, just to darken it up. And then I'm gonna add just the tiniest little drop of black to make it almost sort of a rusty brown color. Since I'm using not the most expensive paint, it is quite sheer, which kind of works to my advantage because when I'm painting it onto these white pumpkins, it'll look a little bit lighter than it does in the jar. Using this color, I'm gonna go ahead and start painting all of my pumpkins and just get a base coat on all of them. Honestly, for these, I only ended up having to do one coat on them. I found that the kind of streakiness and texture just added to the look of them, and it looked all right. So I just left them with one coat, but you could absolutely do more coats if you feel like it needs more color. Once I've got my base coat done, we can start gluing in the paper for our faces. So this is the paper that I'm gonna be using for my lanterns. This is just deli paper. It comes in a box. It's pre-cut into these small squares. I'm gonna be using this to line my pumpkins so that they have those like light up eyes and mouth. Just using a little bit of hot glue, I'm going to dab some dots on the inside right around the opening, and then I'm going to take a sheet of my deli paper and then press it in, trying to get it stretched out as smooth as I can. Again, I'm not worried about it being perfect. The wrinkles just make them look that much creepier. Once I've got paper glued into all of them, we're gonna go ahead and start painting on their faces. For their faces, I'm gonna be using a combination of paint and markers. For the eyes, I'll be starting with a blue marker and drawing some simple blue rings around the outside of the eyes. And then from there, I'll be adding the pupils in with a black Sharpie. For the mouths, I'm gonna take some red acrylic paint that I've darkened just a little bit, and I'm going to paint this around the lips to kind of give it like a clown mouth look. And then we're going to use the same paint with a skinnier brush to paint on some lines for the teeth. For the nose, I'm gonna use a red marker and just completely color the nose in red. And lastly, I'm gonna add some details with a black Sharpie, just adding some wrinkle, laugh lines around the mouth and edges of the eyeballs, as well as some eyebrows to fit the expression of each pumpkin. On the pumpkins with an open mouth, I decided to kind of follow along with the old choir boy pumpkin kind of designs and gave them teeth and a tongue and everything inside their mouth. And I'm honestly really happy with how they turned out. Just drawing on a simple row of top and bottom teeth and a little tongue, and then coloring the tongue in red. I am making a lot of these, and even with the amount that I am trying to produce here, these really didn't take that long and they weren't that much work. So I highly recommend this project if you're even considering it for your own Halloween party. Definitely give these a try because they are super fun. Well, folks, that concludes our first episode of this series. I had such an amazing time making all of these, and I'm so excited to get started on our next projects. But stay tuned, because next week we'll be tackling some things that are much bigger and a little bit more complex than these projects. So that's gonna be a lot of fun to get into. In this episode, we were able to knock out the Halloween Village display, which I think turned out super cute. We are also able to tackle our DIY vintage Halloween piñata, which I am obsessed with, and I think it's so adorable. We were also able to make all of our jack-o'-lanterns to hang over the dance floor. So I think these are gonna look amazing. I honestly am so happy with how they turned out, and huge shout out to everybody who was able to help make these and get these done in time for this party. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on a new episode. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.